it may not be immediately obvious why we're talking about conversation at a happiness conference. But the reason is this. The research shows that happiness is linked to having good relationships, as so many speakers today have said. And these relationships are largely conducted through conversation. Now, I've been teaching a course called The Art of Good Conversation at the University of Sydney. It's a 5-week course, and I've been teaching it for about 9 years. And when I told a friend that I was coming to the happiness conference to talk about conversation, she said, "What? They'll know all about that. What are you going to talk about?" Oh. So I thought, well, look, probably the best thing, seeing I've got 20 minutes, is to tell you a distillation of the most important things about conversation that I've learned from my reading, from my teaching, and from my life experience. And I'll try to pack that into the 18, 17 minutes that remain. And I hope that will be useful. We'll look at 3 key areas. First, what not to do. Second, what to do. And thirdly, and this will take up most of the time really, we'll talk about how listening is our most important skill in conversation. Now, for many people, this is counterintuitive. They think conversation is all about talking. The most important skill in conversation, by far, is listening. And I'll be giving you 7 take-home messages to help you on your way. Now, let's first explore what not to do. And we'll do this by examining our own experience. I'd like you all, please, to think of someone you really don't like having a conversation with. I'm sure everyone will think of someone like that. I certainly can. Now, what is it they do that makes conversation less rewarding than it might be? I'd just like you to think about that, and I'll give you about half a minute, and I won't talk for half a minute. You just think about that. Picture them in your mind and try to work out what it is that they do that makes conversation less pleasant, less rewarding than it might be. Okay, now please turn to the person next to you and share with them what it is that this person does that makes conversation less rewarding than it should be. I'll give you about 3/4 of a minute for that. Okay, now I have to stop you there. Obviously, you could go on talking for quite a while. I'd like to hear what you've been saying, but that's a bit impractical here. Look, I've asked this question lots and lots of times, so I'll bet your list includes some of these. I call them conversation sins. They don't listen. They talk on and on. Do I hear the sound of recognition here? They interrupt. They're argumentative. They take no interest in me. They talk over me. They're so negative. They repeat themselves. They don't seem to be, they don't even seem very pleased to be with me. Now, I think it's a Buddhist principle that we can learn from these people. They can be our teachers. They're teaching us what not to do. So the next time someone is actually doing this to you, you might resort to remembering that. You're getting a lesson. Now, these behaviors, these conversation sins, what they tend to do, I think, is leave you feeling diminished. And this is most unfortunate because this is what they're likely to remember. David Mitchie mentioned this yesterday, and I'm going to repeat what he said, that long after people have forgotten what you talked about, what they will remember is how you made them feel. I'm going to repeat that later on in the talk because it's so important. Now, let's look at what to do. I'd like you to think of someone you really do enjoy having a conversation with and try to work out what it is that this person does that makes conversation so enjoyable. I'll give you about half a minute for that, just thinking about it. Okay, now once again turn to your partner and share with them what this person does. All right, I'll have to stop you there. I'll bet your list includes some of these. They listen to me. They tune into my feelings. They're interested in me. We talk and listen equally, or roughly equally. They ask questions. They explore in an open-minded way. And also they're encouraging. Being with them is an encouraging experience. Now, I've called these virtues, but here's the good news. They're all really skills. And because they're skills, they can all be learned and practiced. These are skills that show an interest, an empathy, a fellow human feeling, a warmth, and most of them can be put under the heading of tuning in, being receptive, empathizing, of being, this is a very important phrase, of being present for the other person. So it's all these things that I mean when I use the shorthand word listening. So here's the second take-home message. Listening is the most important skill in conversation. Listening not just to the words, but importantly for the feelings behind the words. It's listening that takes you into the other person's world and enlarges your own. Listening lets you discover what other people have learned about life. It's through listening that we can expand our world, draw on the experience, wisdom, and perspectives of other people, move beyond the limitations of our own upbringing, discover new directions, new ways of living, new inspiration, new possibilities, and new horizons. Through listening, we come to live not just one life, but many. And listening, taking an interest in other people, is really one of the key skills in making friends. And since friends come in networks, when you make a new friend, you join a new network. So it's not about being clever like Oscar Wilde or Samuel Johnson, or terribly, terribly witty like those people on Spicks and Specks. The main thing is listening. Well, how can we become better at this key skill of listening? And that's what the rest of this session will be about. That's what we'll be talking about now. We'll begin with attention. And this has also been mentioned by some speakers this afternoon. I think Hugh McKay was talking about it. Give the other person your full attention. Listening is not just hearing. It's an active process of deeply connecting with another person and getting a feeling for what it's like to be in their shoes, what it's like to be them. Listening, and listening's like justice. It must not only be done, but it must also appear to be done. People have to know and feel that you're listening. Show that you're interested. Make frequent eye contact. This is partly cultural, of course. That doesn't apply to all cultures, but it applies to mainstream culture in Australia. Lean forward. Don't use your mobile phone or text. Following up on what the other person has just said is a very good way of showing that you're listening carefully. Rather than bring up some new idea, acknowledge their idea, their point, by following up on it. Really be there. Be present for the other person. It's been said that we live in an age of continuous partial attention. Now, this is the enemy of good conversation. You wouldn't say to someone, I don't think you're interesting enough for me to give you my full attention. But that's exactly the message you're sending if you use your mobile phone or text during a conversation. So here's the third take-home message. Give the other person your full attention. Now I'm going to say a little more about tuning into other people's feelings. Feelings are what we need to share if real intimacy is to develop. Conversation is a chance to show each other warmth, kindness, and affection. The Dalai Lama has gone so far as to say, giving and receiving affection is the key to happiness. Now, we all need reminding. In offering kindness and affection in conversation, I find it helps to remind myself that just like me, the other person wants to have a happy life and is very often struggling to have a happy life. And when I remind myself of that, it brings a different feeling to the kind of connection I have with the other person. So the fourth take-home message is all about feelings. Listen, really tune in to the other person's feelings. Now, a few words about another vital aspect of listening, being open and curious. One of your aims is to expand your awareness. So be hospitable to views that are different to your own. Be curious and explore rather than trying to persuade other people to your point of view. Suspend judgment, enjoy difference. Remember, conversation can be a tool for exploring the great question of how to live. Everyone is a living laboratory exploring this question. And every person you meet just might have made some interesting discoveries. In the best conversations, you can emerge a slightly different person. What's the point of emerging from a conversation exactly the same as you were when you entered it? So, the fifth take-home message is, be open and curious. In a good conversation, you're listening to each other and building. It's a collaboration. Conversation is a collaboration, not a performance. You take it in turns to talk. A satisfying rhythm develops, like instruments playing in a jazz group. But that rhythm is affected by each person's turn length. I mean, it's very hard to get a rhythm if you speak for a few seconds and the other person speaks for 15 minutes. So how long do you talk when it's your turn? Well, now, this might surprise many people here, but there is a rough guide, and that is called the 30-second rule. Don't talk longer than about 30 seconds, and then leave space for the other person to make their contribution. 30 seconds is longer than you think. When you go home tonight, look at your watch and see how long it is. It's longer than you think. But it's not a fixed rule, of course. It's just a guideline. By sticking to 30 seconds, you're showing that you're keen to hear what the other person has to say. You're saying, I'm eager to hear your thoughts on this. So our sixth take-home message is the 30-second rule. Don't talk much longer than about 30 seconds. Now, we said conversation is a collaboration, not a performance. One of the skills of a good conversation is to facilitate that collaboration, making sure that all members of the group get a chance to be listened to. So you can bring in people who are silent by saying things like, well, what do you think, Michael? Or Jane, you've had experience with this. How did you handle it? So part of you is quietly taking on something of the role of the conductor of an orchestra. The conductor of an orchestra makes no sound. His or her job is to help everyone else to be of their best. Conversations go best when everyone takes responsibility for the conversation to go well. So the seventh take-home message is, take responsibility for helping everyone contribute and be of their best. So, to sum up, listen, tune in, really be present for the other person. Give the other person your full attention. Listen with empathy for the feelings behind the words. Remember the 30-second rule, if you can. Be open and curious. help everyone contribute and be of their best. And finally, I'll leave you with the thought that we began with. Long after people have forgotten what you talked about, what they'll remember is how you made them feel. Now, that's it. A crash course in conversation. Thank you.